Hello, this is Melinda Bassett reporting to you today on December 6, 2023. And I would like to say that the challenges are over and that I have been delivered from this horrible health circumstance and that my boyfriend has been delivered from alcoholism and addiction. And that is not the message I'm giving you today. I am still on the front lines. So hard to believe. A few days ago, I recorded a video saying that I felt like I was at the beginning of my recovery from 27 years of chronic fatigue syndrome because I was able to fall asleep several times last week and it felt like the disease was loosening up. But I also said it's way too early to tell because I've had many false starts like this before over the past 27 years and it has yet to really gain traction and take hold. And yes, it was still too early to tell. I haven't been able to sleep the last couple nights. And so we're still in it. We're still in it. But, here's the thing. I want to talk to all the very successful people in our world before they became successful. Like, I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, Joyce Meyer, Joel Osteen, Joel and Victoria Osteen, Tony and Sage Robbins, Joyce and Dave Meyer. Let's not forget the spouses because our mentors wouldn't be there if it weren't for their spouses who are equally as victorious and strong as they are. But where were these guys before they became successful? Okay, we've heard Joyce Meyer's story. She was sexually abused for many, many years between the ages of, 10 and 18, something like that. Growing up, she was sexually abused and raped by her father. But I wish that she had recorded some videos or had put out some books or content while she was going through that circumstance or shortly afterward, before she became very, very famous. Because we hear all these stories from people after they become very famous, after they've had the victory. But I want to speak to someone who's still in the middle of it. Like Tony Robbins, he's another big mentor of mine. But he's been a billionaire for so long, multi-billionaire. He's been storming all over the world for so many years, doing his UPWs, his Unleash the Power Within, his Day with Destinies, teaching people the tools to overcome massive adversity, etc. But when was the last time he had a massive adversity? And when was the last time he really had to use the tools that he teaches? And I know he still goes through things. He's human. I know he had some health problems a few years back, and once in a while, he does. Yes, he does. Of course, he's human. I don't know him personally, but he hasn't. When's the last time he had a really massive, massive problem that was trying to kill him, where he really had to practice all these principles? Like, we only see him after he became successful. I want to talk to someone who's still going through it. And how are you getting through it right now? I have yet to become successful. I have yet to overcome my massive health challenge and huge burden that I've been carrying for over 2.5 decades. So I'm right in the middle of it. So I want to talk to you about being in the middle because it's wonderful that these people have had victories. Joel Osteen, he speaks about how the loss of his father, who was his best friend, and how when he started to rise to fame, how he had to undergo a lot of criticism and friends and family members drawing away, maybe not family members. He's too gracious to point anyone out individually, but he does talk a lot in his sermons about people pulling away from you, friends pulling away from you, and I know he underwent heavy criticism on his rise to fame and fortune, which that's not really the right words. God has promoted him, has elevated him to a place of stature so that Lakewood Church could be influential around the world. And as a byproduct of that, he got fame and fortune, but that's not the reason why he's doing it. So I want to talk to these, and I love these guys. I love their messages. But I want to talk to someone who's in the middle of it. I want to talk to someone who hasn't got the victory yet, but by faith believes that the victory is coming, like myself, believes that we're going to be overcomer because Christ says we are more than conquerors. I want to talk to the people who are in the middle of the adversity, who are still having to exercise their faith, who are still having to release their faith every single day, who still haven't seen any sign that their deliverance is coming, like myself. How are you doing it? Those are the people I want to talk to. I want to see people before they become successful. I believe I'm successful in the spiritual realm. I'm a superhero in the spiritual realm, in the unseen realm. but it hasn't manifested yet into the physical realm. Of course, I do act like a superhero every day. Anyone who has chronic fatigue syndrome, who is not killing themselves, is a superhero. And of course, that goes for many other challenges as well. Like I'm sure parents of disabled children, special needs children, that's got to be its own special brand of hell. Anyone undergoing any sort of addiction who honestly has no control over their behavior or the obsessions, the urges, the addictions are coming upon them, that's a special brand of hell. There's people in this world living on garbage dumps. There's people in this world who live on garbage dumps, kids who live on garbage dumps, who pick up little pieces of garbage to try and sell them. There's people, most of the world does not have internet. Most of the world lives on less than $2 a day. A lot of people don't have running water, don't have electricity. In this world, it's hard for us in the United States to imagine this, but there are a lot of people in this world who don't have these things that we take for granted. There's a lot of people who don't have vehicles, a lot of people who don't have places to live. In other countries, they don't have Social Security disability benefits. They don't have government-funded welfare. Well, maybe they do in Canada, England, but there's a lot of countries that don't. Mexico, for instance. In Mexico, if you're sick, you've got to rely upon your friends and family. You've got to rely upon loved ones. There ain't no one coming for you in Mexico. I mean, we are so blessed that we are not, if you have a big challenge, you're not living in Mexico. At least you have your challenge in the United States of America, where you have access to try and get some help. And I know there's a lot of other countries as well. I haven't traveled the world as an adult since I've been ill for so long, but I know there's a lot of places in this world where if you have a problem, you're basically screwed if you have some sort of massive big problem. So in the United States, we have big problems too, but at least we have more resources to try and help us. At least we can worship freely in the United States of America. You can't do that in Middle East and some other places. You can't profess to know Christ or to love Christ. What was I going to say right now? We have police and ambulances in the United States of America. A lot of countries don't have police or ambulances, and you're on your own, man. We have AAA. Let's get real here. We got AAA in the United States of America. In Mexico, if you break down in your car, you're at the mercy of whoever's driving by, and a lot of times those are robbers and bad guys. We have hospitals here. We have medical schools. We have surgeons have knowledge of surgery. You can get a lot of cosmetic procedures done. We have great dental plans and dental work, great dentists here in the United States of America. Even in a developed, industrialized country like England, people have terrible teeth for the most part. Generally speaking, the dental work there is poor. People don't get their teeth done. Everyone's teeth don't look good in England, and that's a developed country. So whatever problem you have, if you live in the United States of America, you have a better chance of getting over it. We have more knowledge about God here. So many other benefits and advantages to living in this country. So some of you know my story. I became ill in the August of 1998. I lost my health. What does that mean? I'd always been so healthy growing up, mountain biked everywhere, rode my bike everywhere, flailed around on the ski mountains in winter. I'm not going to say skied because I was never technically a good skier, but I loved the hell out of going to the mountains and flailing down the mountain on my skis. I just loved the whole concept of being outside. I was always strong, vivacious, very active, very busy, all growing up. Actually too active and too busy, and driven too hard, which is part of the reason why I developed chronic fatigue syndrome. But chronic fatigue syndrome, as we're just learning recently from Dr. Raymond Perrin, who is the chronic fatigue syndrome expert who lives in England. He is a British neuroscientist, has a PhD in neuroscience. He's also an osteopath. He asserts that chronic fatigue syndrome is actually a situation, it's actually a I haven't studied this recently, but basically it's a problem where your sympathetic nerves cannot properly fire your lymphatic vessels. It's a neurolymphatic disease. Neuro meaning nerve, lymphatic meaning lymph. What happens in chronic fatigue syndrome patients is the lymph vessels don't drain. There's a scientific reason why the person feels horrendous all the time. Their body cannot get rid of waste. The lymph vessels cannot push the toxic fluid through them so that the toxic fluid can then enter the bloodstream and thereby get filtered through the liver and kidneys for the poisons to leave the body into the toilet. It doesn't happen. And in fact, in chronic fatigue syndrome patients, the lymph vessels drain backward. They drain the wrong way. Not only are they not draining the right way, they're not being squeezed because the sympathetic nerves cannot squeeze the lymph vessels because the part of the brain that controls the sympathetic nerves is saturated with toxicity. I believe that is the hypothalamus and the basal ganglia, if I'm not mistaken. So chronic fatigue syndrome is a death sentence. It is a death sentence. Are you hearing me? Now, I'm not talking people who say they're always tired. There's a big difference between feeling chronically fatigued, chronically tired, and having chronic fatigue syndrome. Chronic fatigue syndrome is a death sentence. It is so bad. It is one of the worst things that can happen to a human body. And I would have expired many years ago, certainly by 2012, if I had not learned about the power of fasting, the power of fasting, water fasting, going multiple days without food and only water at bed rest. And I employed this tool for years in between 2006 and 2014, which is, how many years is that? 9 years? 9 plus 6, 8 years, I guess. 2006 to 2014, I fasted almost more days than I ate. I was notorious for going for 3-week fasts very regularly because it was the only way I could retard the spread of this disease. It was the only way I could, if your body cannot eliminate waste, fasting helps to accelerate the elimination of waste products in the body. So it was a marvelous tool for beating back the spread of the disease, for getting those trash counts of waste to become smaller, and for the body to have a break and start to eliminate waste. And I gained a lot of relief from the horrendous fatigue of chronic fatigue syndrome. But it's not just about fatigue. Okay, if it were just about fatigue, I would have sailed through this with flying colors. Chronic fatigue syndrome is about agony. Agony. Capital A, capital G, capital O, capital N, capital Y. Because for every second of the day and night, you are in so much crushing pain that you cannot tolerate it. And the pain I'm referring to is a systemic, profound pain that is so great that you want to cry, but you don't have the energy to. You just feel like fucking death because your body is so saturated with waste. And in my case, this presented as strong insomnia, where your body won't fall asleep no matter how tired you are. Doesn't matter how tired you are. Doesn't matter how much work you did that day. Doesn't matter how deserving you are of sleep. You will not fall asleep. It's like you're on a constant speed trip. Like you've just drank 2 gallons of coffee forever. It's like, it's literal hell. And if that were just all it was, if that were all chronic fatigue syndrome was, again, that'd be a party. But it's so much even worse than that. There's so many other precipitating factors. Because when your lymphatic vessels are not draining, when your vagus nerve is damaged, because it's a form of autonomic nerve disease, your sympathetic nerves are far extended, way too overactive. Your parasympathetic nerves aren't working. So what happens in this lovely case is that you get, normally your nerves, your sympathetic nerves control peristalsis. Peristalsis is that pushing action, again, in your intestines, where your intestines are pushing through your intestines, and where you have a lot of hydrochloric acid in your stomach, like you're supposed to. The hydrochloric acid keeps the pH in your stomach very high. The pH very low, which is very acidic, the way you want it. You want a low pH between 0 and 7 in your stomach, low pH, which means high acid, which means that when you've got a lot of strong stomach acid, you're not going to have bacterial overgrowth or fungal overgrowth. You're not going to have excessive bacterial overgrowth or fungus overgrowth in your small intestine. You're not supposed to have much bacteria in your small intestine. You're not supposed to have much fungus. And there's supposed to be a nice mix there of good bacteria and good fungus. But when you've got nerve damage, when your nerves are not functioning properly, because that area of your brain, the hypothalamus and basal ganglia, are so saturated with toxicity that your vagus nerve can't control peristalsis, your autonomic nerves are not working properly, what happens is that you have a high pH in your stomach. You have low amount of hydrochloric acid. It's far too base, which means a pH between 7 and 14. It's far too basic. And since there's no or very little stomach acid there, you're going to have massive overgrowth of bacteria, bad bacteria, and bad fungus. And this exponentially multiplies the pain of chronic fatigue syndrome, because now you're fighting a gut war too. So in addition to not being able to fall asleep because of all the poison circulating in your head that cannot drain out of your head, by the way, you've got lymphatic vessels in your head called the glymphatic system. And if they do not drain, as in the case with CFS, you're going to be in agony. And then let's multiply that, because now in your small intestine, you have massive circulating bad bacteria and bad fungus, which all are living organisms and secrete waste, just like all living organisms secrete like 89 different versions of waste products that are now free floating in your bloodstream, circulating through your brain, through your blood, through your brain. So now you have, if you had insomnia before, now it's multiplied by infinity. Now you're never going to sleep. And then you have all kinds of problems that go along with the fungus. Like, it's just horrific. It's just horrific. You've got leaky gut syndrome, because there's too much bad bacteria, too much fungus. Your mucus barrier in your intestines is far too thin or non-existent. You've got your irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, and all that stuff. In my case, it presented as I would get horrible urges to eat, horrible cravings to eat, terrible food that I would never eat if I had any control over it. Because normally I'm a very healthy eater. I'm a bodybuilder, and my spirit is a bodybuilder. My body cannot express that right now, but that is who Melinda Bassett is. I am a bodybuilder. I am a very lean individual when I have control over my body. Right now, I do not have control over my body. So this is one reason why I have so much sympathy for people with addictions, because I know what it's like not to have control of your body. It's insane. Your spirit can be at polar odds, at polar opposites with your body, because you know who you are. You know what you would be doing if you didn't have a roadblock in front of you, but the forces that be are preventing you from being able to live your life the way you want to be, or represent your body the way you want to represent it. So that's another special brand of hell right there, because I'm forced to walk around grossly overweight. Okay, and let me just interject this as well. If you're a bodybuilder, you care about your appearance, okay? You have to. And if your physical appearance is shit because you're forced to be 50 pounds overweight, you can't have any muscular development because you cannot train because you never sleep. If you don't sleep, you don't recover. But I don't even have the energy to train, which is what I would be doing right now. I live 3 blocks from Gold's Gym in Venice. I moved here in 2001 for the gym, for Gold's Gym. I worked there for 2 brief stints while I was greatly disabled. And that was as much as I could do because of my disability. And then I had to get on disability benefits because it was just agony trying to be in this much pain and trying to work. I really could not function. I could not be in a good mood. I could not greet people cheerfully. When you're working in a positive environment, you feel like death. It doesn't work out very well. It doesn't align. So I forgot where I was going with that. But basically, so in chronic fatigue syndrome, you have all kinds of infections all the time. You're living with a constant bacterial and fungus overgrowth, which present as many other infections. For women, you've got the vaginal infections all the time. You've got high yeast problems, which are causing cravings, high bacteria in your intestines, which causes cravings. You've got this leaky gut thing going on. You can't sleep, so you can't recover. And then if that were all it was, it'd be bad. But it still gets so much worse than that, even. So much worse than that. That there's a problem that's so bad I can't even talk about it yet because it's still happening. But when I've had a respite from this particular problem, I will tell you what it is. And this particular problem makes you want to just fucking kill yourself. Okay? You have to be some kind of spiritual brute. Like a spiritual brute of a kind you've never even seen to get through this particular problem on top of everything else. Okay? So let's talk about being in the middle of an adversity. Let's talk about being smack in the middle on the front lines of a problem that's so bad that there's not even another human being on the planet who can understand it. Maybe they can understand parts of it. But the only person who can really understand what you and I are going through is the Savior of the world, Jesus the Anointed One. And by the way, I use the word savor instead of savior because for many, many years, I didn't even understand that the word savior, S-A-V-I-O-R, actually means someone who saves. A saver, S-A-V-E-R. And I was like, I didn't even realize this until a couple years ago. I'm like, why is everyone calling him the Savior and expecting people to understand that that means he's the person who saves? Just say saver. It makes so much more sense to someone like me. He's the saver, someone who saves. So I'm just throwing that in for free. I think it makes a lot more sense. I think everyone should start calling him the Saver. So Jesus Christ is the author and the finisher of our faith. And that is from straight out of the Bible and Hebrews. He is the author of our faith. He's the finisher of our faith. What does that mean? It means he's not going to let us go half-baked. And here's another scripture I love from the Bible. That the good work he started in you, he will finish. This is from Philippians. He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion. Completion. He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. So whatever you're going through right now, if you're in the middle of something like I am, and you have been for a long ass time, and you're like, when is the sun ever going to shine again? For the love of God. Now we do know that this life here is mortal. This life in this earth is going to last roughly 100 years, and then we're going to move on to the eternities. So in that sense, every trial that we're going through right now does have a finite ending, okay? Because our problems here on earth are not going to follow us. Well, no, let me back up. Some of our problems here will follow us into the eternities. Problems that are spiritual in nature. But problems that are physical in nature will not follow us to the eternities because we're not going to have a body up there for a while. We won't have a physical body up there for a while until we become resurrected, which is going to be a little bit down the line. So, he who began a good work in you will finish it. He who started your faith is going to finish it. That means there is a finish line. Now, for me, I'm believing for a recovery on this earth in this life. That is what Heavenly Father told me in the year 2000 when I prayed to him and I asked, am I ever going to get on the bodybuilding stage again? And he replied, yes, yes, not with a voice, as I said in my last video. But my heart began to beat so hard as I was asking him this question that by the time I got to the last word of that question, am I ever going to get on the bodybuilding stage again? My heart was like ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. It was like beating out of my chest. And my whole chest area felt extremely warm and just an overpowering sensation of warmth in my chest. And we know that that means yes in God's language. That means yes. Yes. So I have been believing for a long time for a recovery, for full recovery. I want to be able to sleep short and quick. I want to be able to fall asleep deeply. I want to be able to fall asleep immediately when my head hits the pillow like my dad does and like a lot of you do out there. Did you know that if you can access the deepest levels of sleep soon after falling asleep, that you can actually completely rejuvenate your body in 2.5 hours? That's what I heard. I can't remember where I heard it, but I heard that if you there's several layers of sleep, right? There's the REM, there's like alpha, there's delta waves. But when you fall asleep, if you can rapidly enter those deepest stages of sleep, you can actually rejuvenate yourself in 2.5 hours. Wow. And I know of some people that only have to sleep for 4 hours a night. These are people older than me. I'm 50 years young. But generally, the generation that came before me, and especially 2 generations ago, those people were raised in a world that was not poisoned. A lot of them were raised on farms. They have really good genetics, and their nerves are protected. They grew up protected, and those people can sleep really well, a lot of them. So the goal here is to get your body as efficient in as efficient of a state as possible, so that you can sleep short and deep, so that you can have an abundance of energy to call upon whenever you want it, and to have every cell be able to function at its capacity, which means cells have to be able to uptake nutrition, and they've got to be able to secrete waste products. And then your nerves have to be strong too. I never even heard of nerves or lymph vessels. I only started studying nerves like 3 years ago when I was diagnosed with autonomic disease by an osteopath. And then I only started studying lymph this past January. And that's when I ran into Dr. Perrin's work. So your sympathetic nerves have to be strong. They've got to be toned. Toned. Just like your muscles have to be toned to be strong, your nerves have to be toned. So how do you tone your nerves? It's the same answer as all the other answers we know. Try and get enough sleep. Try and eat well. Drink water. Exercise. But what do you do if your nerves are already shot? Like mine. What do you do then? Well, Dr. Raymond Perrin has come up with a technique called the Perrin technique. He has been practicing with chronic fatigue syndrome patients over the last 35 years as an osteopath in England. And he has invented and perfected a technique which consists of part lymphatic massage and part cranial osteopathy on the head, which is where they manipulate your head so that it can drain the nasty cerebrospinal fluid out of it. And every week you go to the osteopath. I go to the osteopath every week. I get my head drained, basically, with cranial techniques. He manipulates my head to get it to drain. And I have seen minimal intermittent improvement, which is indicative. It's a good sign, but it's by no means, I'm still at the very, very beginning. It's still very, very intermittent. So I'm still at the beginning of this, but it's a start. So back to being in the middle of your adversity. Jesus says he's the author and the finisher of your faith. He says the good work he started in you, he will finish. I want to talk about right now finishing what we start. I love to finish a project that I have started on. I'm not saying I always do it right away, but I love to finish things. I can't stand to leave a book unread once I've started it. It brings me pain to know that there is a book that I started and I have not finished. Why? Because my identity is so closely related to finishing things, to being a finisher. Because if I don't finish something that I start, I'm telling you, I feel like a loser. I feel weak. It makes me feel weak. It makes me feel lame. And I think that we all want to try and get this kind of identity because it gives you a very good sense of self-esteem, gives you a very good sense of self-worth when you finish something that you start. So how do you get yourself to finish something? I know some people who say they have an issue with what they call laziness or procrastination. This is what I do. Every day, I have a list of the things that need to be done that day. And the first thing on the list has to be the thing that you want to do the least. The first item on your list has to be that odious chore that you've been dreading, that you hate, and that you wish would just disappear. It has to be that way. Why? Because if it's number 2 on your list, it won't get done. It's got to be number 1. Right now I have a couch out on the front porch that needs to be reupholstered. It's been there for a month because I've been distracted with work and trying to make money and health problems and all this. But this couch is driving me fucking crazy, okay? And the pain is so bad because my identity as a finisher is so strong that this pain of not finishing something is eating away at me. It's eating away. So here's the thing. We want to associate so much pleasure to finishing projects that the idea of not finishing them causes us pain. How do we do that? We make small goals. I am going to wash all the dishes tonight. I'm not going to bed until all the dishes are washed in my sink. That's something that can be considered a small project, but it makes you feel really good when the project's done. And by the way, I do have to wash all the dishes in my sink tonight because we have had a cockroach problem lately because I have not been washing all the dishes in the sink every night. So now I have to do that. So you start with a small goal and then you make yourself do it. You just make yourself do it. Okay, there's no tricks involved there. I guess what would be underlying that is a desire to improve yourself. There's got to be a desire to improve yourself. Now, I have met a certain cohort of people, especially living in Los Angeles, who don't seem to have a desire to improve themselves. Now, I understand addictions. I understand illnesses overpowering us and being stronger than us. But there are moments in your day that you do have control over. And here's the thing. You've got to grab those moments. You got to grab those moments. Maybe you just have 5 minutes out of your day where you're not being tortured by an addiction or an overwhelming urge, or let's say you have an illness like I do. Look at this. I'm filming a video tonight after I've been doing a home staging job for the last 3 days on very little sleep. So tired, but I'm making myself do this because I have a desire. I have a desire for a better life. I have a desire to maximize my time here on earth. And even if it's only 5 minutes out of your day, you grab onto those 5 minutes and you read one paragraph in that book that you need to finish. Or you just do a tiny little bit on some project that you're working on. Really, it only has to be one paragraph, maybe just one verse in the Bible you need to read, just something small. But it is so imperative to hang on to your identity as a finisher because Jesus is not giving up on us. He's going to finish the work he did in us. And he wants us to finish the work that we start. It makes us feel really good. We need to get to a place where we associate massive pleasure to finishing things so that our identity is tied so closely to finishing things that we cannot countenance not finishing something. Unless, of course, and here's the caveat to that, we need to learn when putting more effort into something is a waste of time. And this is a balance thing that takes time and experience to learn how to do. But you also need to know when to let go of something. But for the majority of people, that's not the issue. For the majority of people, it's getting ourselves to do something. Tony Robbins says that the average person does more to avoid pain than to chase pleasure. And I still don't quite understand that, but it took me a while to understand. He says the average person does more to get out of pain than they do to try and chase a pleasurable situation, which translates to most people just do the bare minimum to get by. Most people just do the bare minimum they have to pay their rent, pay their mortgage, pay their bills. I'm speaking generally. There's obviously some people who are massively successful, but generally speaking, most people are just willing to do the bare minimum to get by, as opposed to taking the high road, taking the long view, playing the long game. How can I maximize this opportunity? How can I maximize my finances and make them multiply and grow? How can I make my relationships as happy and fulfilling as possible? How can I maximize my muscular growth, my muscular potential? How can I maximize my sleep, my cells? Like I'm a huge fan of longevity and physical performance. I'm obsessed, absolutely obsessed with the human body. And I have been ever since I was born. I can remember giving a speech in 7th grade on health and fitness to my 7th grade class. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. I've always been really interested in physical fitness, but I've never been a great athlete. But it's also because I was learning how to master my body, just like we all are, We're all born into this physical body. There's no user's manual. You have to learn as you go. You learn how to eat properly. You learn how to take care of your body. And then I guess suppose our user's manuals would be speaking to people who know a lot about health. The scriptures do have some good advice about how to take care of our bodies. Fasting, the scriptures talk a lot about fasting to maximize physical health, not even for the spiritual aspects of it. But how do we multiply our resources? How do we become finishers? And how do we maximize every component of this earthly life? It's so short. It's so short, you guys. I'm sure you know many people who've already gone to the other side. People are going to the other side every day. My grandpa went to heaven 2 days ago. My boyfriend's friend went to heaven also within the past couple of days. Life is short, guys, and it's passing by, man. Every second it's going. We don't have much time here to do what we came here to do. And every person on this earth has a mission. Every single person on this earth has a mission. So if you're limited by an illness, by an injury, by poverty, by an addiction, if you're having to be limited in your life by lack of money, if you're having to be limited, which most of us are fighting some kind of limitation, I'm begging you right now to take those moments in the day and maximize the moments, because this will have a multiplication effect elsewhere in your life. Out of small things proceeds great things. This reminds me of another scripture. Be ye not weary in well-doing, for out of small things proceeds that which is great. I'm sorry, I got it wrong. Be ye not weary in well-doing, for you are laying the foundation of a great work, and out of small things proceeds that which is great. This is biblical, all right? So this principle is biblical. Take the moments, take that 5 minutes you have in the day, read a paragraph in your book, make that video, make the phone call. I have to make a lot of phone calls to customer service people asking for credit because my bills get screwed up a lot. Or I have to ask for refunds. And I hate calling these customer service people because you have to wait on the phone forever. It's only robots to answer the phone. But making these calls is the difference between being a successful person and not. Maybe you have to spend an hour on the phone, but it takes discipline. You've got to really be a bulldog for anything you want in this life. You just have to gut it out. You have to sit in the chair, make the phone call, and you feel so much better afterwards, and your life catapults ahead when you make yourself do these small things. And if you have no moments in that day, there's not that many days where you really don't have any moments to try and do something. But I'm going to say that no matter how hard your life is, you can create at least 5 minutes to do something that is a goal of yours. Now, maybe you're bedridden, maybe you're quadriplegic. You can take 5 minutes with your head and think about that thing you want to do for 5 minutes. I'm going to tell you something. I'm a violinist, and I have found that sometimes I can practice in my head without having my violin in my hand, without having my music. I rehearse in my head how the piece is going to go, how I'm going to place my fingers, what I'm going to do with the dynamics. You can practice things in your head, and you actually get a lot better experiential sensation when you rehearse things in your head before you physically do them. That's another great principle. So let's take those moments in your day. Take the moments. Because someday the illness, the limitation will be gone. But guess what will be left? You have this great self-discipline where you've learned how to maximize these moments. So now you've got nothing but moments because your limitation will be gone and you'll have all this great skill that you have mastered. So this is how we're preparing right now. We're preparing for the limitations to be lifted. Prepare for that day because it's coming. Hopefully for most of us that will be in this life. For some people, the limitation will not be removed in this life. And we have to address this. This is a real fact. Some people will not have legs for this whole mortal life. But the day will come where they will have legs. So they better be ready, be prepared, be rehearsed, be prepped up, man, for whatever it is that you want to do. We always have to be preparing because the limitation will be lifted. And when the limitation is lifted, we don't want to just be standing here like, oh, wow, the thing I've been praying for finally came to pass. What do I do now? I don't know. I'm not ready for this. I haven't been thinking about it. I'm not prepared. Be so ready. Have your shit so ready that when the light turns green, you take off. When that red light turns green, you take off because you've been waiting for it and you're ready and you're prepared. You've got your career all mapped out. You know exactly what you're going to do. You know what you're going to do with your money. You know how you're going to invest it. You know what kind of house you're going to buy. You know exactly what movements you're going to do at the gym. You know exactly who to contact to publish your book. It's all in place. It's all in place because you've been rehearsing and preparing for many years by harnessing these moments. That's my message to you today.